Nothing But the Truth. Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa from India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will deal with key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you without holding back on the truth. Since 2001, India Today magazine has been conducting a biannual Mood of the Nation poll, or MOTN for short. It has now come to be regarded as the barometer of the way political fortunes in the country are blowing. This year, in collaboration with the Seawater, the country's respected polling agency, the magazine has just released the findings of the Mood of the Nation poll this February. Coming just 2 months before the 2024 general election, the MOTN has the answers to many of the big political, economic, and social questions that will engage the electorate. So in this episode of Nothing But the Truth, we will look at the 10 big takeaways of the India Today Seawater latest Mood of the Nation poll. Now let's begin with the first big takeaway, and that is India Today's MOTN poll predicts that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the ruling BJP are all set for a momentous hat-trick. If an election were held now, the poll gives the BJP 304 seats. Now that is a comfortable majority, which is 32 more than the 272 needed for a simple majority in the Lok Sabha. It is also one more than the actual number the party won in the 2019 general election. If you recall, it won 303 seats. This time it's going to get 304 seats according to the poll. Now, when you look at the overall tally, which is the BJP-led National Democratic Alliance, or NDA, will get 335 seats. This is a drop from its 2019 tally of 353. Now, if in Parliament, the Prime Minister had mentioned that not only will the BJP get 370 seats, but also it will cross, the NDA would cross 400. Our poll shows that they are not yet there. But what is important is that tellingly, there has been a steady increase since the lowest ever figure of 269 seats in its second term, which was in the MOTN of August 2021. Now, this was in the thick of the COVID pandemic, and the BJP's majority in our polls had dropped to 269, whereas the current MOTN gives Modi and the BJP party a clear majority. If Modi wins a third consecutive victory with a full majority for the BJP, he would equal the record set by Jawaharlal Nehru, the country's first prime minister. Now, Nehru had led the Congress to consecutive wins with full majorities in the 1952, 1957, and 1962 general elections before he died in 1964. The second big takeaway is that the results indicate a creditable pro-incumbency trend for Modi and the BJP. This is in sharp contrast to the findings of the January 2014 MOTN done 10 years ago. Now remember, India Today has been tracking the Mood of the Nation since 2001, and in 2014 January, when the Congress-led United Progressive Alliance, or UPA, was seeking a third consecutive term in government, we did a survey at that time almost similar to what we did now. In that survey, the MOTN predicted that the UPA's tally would crash to 100 seats, a steep fall of 150 seats that they had before that. The actual tally, as we found in the 2014 general election, was 92. That was the UPA. Now, the 2014 poll indicated that the Modi-led NDA was heading for a majority. They would then consolidate that majority in 2014. As you know, they also won very convincingly with a clear majority for themselves as well as the NDA. So come to 2024. And here, there is a clear trend line that shows that Modi and the BJP are once again heading for a decisive victory. Let's take a look at the third big takeaway. And this reiterates in many senses that the BJP is in pole position. Those who were surveyed were asked to rate Narendra Modi's performance as Prime Minister in his 10th year in office. Now, as many as 60.5% of the respondents considered his performance to be good, outstanding, with only 23.6% putting it in the very poor to poor category. Now, this 60% rating is commendable, given the, several facts. One, there was the multiple major crises that Modi had to tackle in his second term. Remember, he had a once-in-a-century pandemic that caused enormous economic collapse followed by a global economic slowdown. Two major wars, one in Ukraine and the other in Gaza, fueled inflation because of the energy crisis that they created. And yet, Prime Minister Modi has a rating of 60%, which means there is no anti-incumbency, despite the fact that he had to face so much of crisis for his leadership in the second term. Any other leader could have wilted away, but not Mr. Modi. He seems to be thriving in adversity and converting it into an opportunity. The fourth big takeaway is that the current Mood of the Nation poll also reflects clearly that what pollsters call TINA factor, which is there is no alternative, and this factor means that Mr. Modi goes right ahead while the others are left behind. In fact, they've now changed the acronym, and it is now called TIMO, or there is Modi only. Now, this can be gauged by the responses to just one question in the MOTN survey. We asked those surveyed, who is the best suited to be the next Prime Minister of India? Now, when Modi started his second term in 2019, India Today's MOTN poll in August that year gave him a stratospheric rating of 66%. But in the thick of the second COVID wave in August 2021, Modi's ratings had dropped precipitously to 24%. But since then, in 5 successive MOTNs, or Mood of the Nation polls, that rating has shot up and currently hovers above the 50% mark. The latest, in fact, gives him a 61%, which for a Prime Minister serving his 10th year is commendable, as I said earlier. Significantly, the gap between Modi and Rahul Gandhi, his prime challenger, which had narrowed to just 14 percentage points in August 2021, has now widened to 41 percentage points. That, in polling terms, is as wide as the Grand Canyon just before the general elections. The fifth takeaway is that the current Mood of the Nation poll holds little cheer for Rahul Gandhi and the Congress. Now, Rahul Gandhi is seen as the putative challenger to Modi, and even though with 21.3%, he does top the list of opposition leaders best suited to lead the tottering Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance, or India for short, he was ahead of Arvind Kejriwal in this poll, who got 17.4%, and Mamata Banerjee with 16.5%. But the boost Rahul Gandhi got after his first Bharat Jodo Yatra that ended in January 2023 seems to be on the wane. In August 2023, close to 52% had rated his performance as an opposition leader as outstanding to good. Now, that figure has dropped to 39%. The Congress overall vote share is down by 1.4 percentage points and is now expected to be just 18.9%, with this poll predicting that the Congress will just get 71 seats. Well, that's just about 19 more than what the 52 seats the party got in 2019 election, and this would be the third consecutive time that the Congress party's tally in the Lok Sabha will not cross 100 seats if this MOTN results prove accurate. If you recall, in 2014, the Congress tally had crashed to an all-time low of 44 seats. So the Congress party, the message for the Congress party is that it needs to introspect as to what it needs to do, to challenge the BJP, how it should revamp its strategy so that it can pose a credible challenge to the BJP. The sixth takeaway is that there is more bad news for the opposition, especially with Nitish Kumar's recent exit from India, or the India Alliance, to join hands with the BJP again. Almost 46% believe that Nitish Kumar's exit has dealt a body blow to the alliance's chances of defeating the ruling NDA. Now, compared to the August 2023, that is when Nitish Kumar was with the India Alliance, the India's vote share after he left is now down 3 percentage points. It was 41% at that time in August 2023. It is down to 38.3%. In terms of seats, the alliance numbers have dropped from 193 6 months ago to 166 now. It means that they have no real challenge. They cannot pose a real challenge to the NDA unless in these next 2 months something significant or a black swan event that happens that can change the electoral verdict, or at least the predictions that we have right now. The seventh big takeaway that the poll reveals is that Amit Shah, the Union Home Minister, has emerged on the top of the list of BJP leaders most favored to succeed Narendra Modi as the BJP's prime ministerial party candidate. Now, Amit Shah, seen as the strong man of the party, is also and is seen as responsible for making the party the juggernaut that it is now. He is ahead of Yogi Adityanath by 4 percentage points. That's a significant gap that has emerged. And the third person in that list is Union Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari, who comes a distant third. The eighth big takeaway, and this is an in-depth dissection of the vote percentages done by the sea voter. Now, this shows very interestingly that more males in this survey voted for the NDA than females. So the NDA has to think about it, because for India Alliance, it was more females that voted for it than the males. This comes after Mr. Modi and the NDA government had made a huge emphasis in terms of not only reserving 33% seats for them in the Lok Sabha, but also a lot of their welfare programs had been directed towards the women, especially women of India, especially if you looked at Swachh Bharat, the toilets, as well as drinking water, and Ayushman Bharat, and housing as well. Much of them had been directed, Ujjwala gas, not to forget that, the gas cylinders and the gas connections that were given. And yet, it seems that the NDA still has to catch up in terms of votes for women, to get women convinced that they are. Of course, let's be clear, this is preliminary findings of the survey. There's still 2 months to go. Things could change. Then let's take the age groups up from 18, which is the voting age, right up to old age, and you will find that this survey shows that the NDA had cross-generational support for it. That is commendable in that sense, because normally it was felt that the younger lot, in terms of the jobs and others, given the fact that they were more concerned, that might be lower, but this doesn't show a big change, though it does show among the 30 to above 30 group, the NDA enjoys more support. But very significantly, when it came to income levels, the highest support for the NDA came from the higher income groups and to some extent the middle income one. There was a close fight for the lower income groups between the two alliances. Now let's pause for a moment to think about that. What does it show? And this is reiterated by another finding of the MOTN, which shows that a large percentage of the people believe that economic policies are directed towards big business and not necessarily the medium and small businesses. This is a perception that the NDA has not been able to correct in all the MOTNs that we have held in the Narendra Modi government's second term. Now, interestingly, and here there is something for the NDA, when it comes to minorities, India Alliance has the clear support of them, but the NDA in this poll showed it could still muster the support of 20% of the Muslims. Now, that is a significant thing. Also for it, among the other backward classes, OBCs and upper castes, the NDA has a clear lead. And here we must again ponder and think, because this is what happened in terms of the way Nitish Kumar and the India Alliance had built the whole thing about the OBC castes and the need for a survey for both the OBCs and the extremely backward castes. And this is why Nitish Kumar had split and the opposition had formed an alliance. They even had released a survey in Bihar about that. But from what we see here, the BJP still has, the BJP and NDA has a clear lead when it comes to the OBCs. But interestingly, the race narrows down considerably when it comes to the scheduled castes and tribes. Now, if we take a look at the urban-rural divide, you'll see that this poll shows that the NDA seems to have the urban vote firmly in its pocket, but it is going to be a tough fight with India for rural votes. And if you go by the MOTN numbers, this seems to be validated. And if you look at other factors, and I'm coming to that, which is the ninth big takeaway, is that while both Narendra Modi and the BJP come out largely shining in the MOTN, this MOTN, there are warning signs that they need to take heed, especially on the economic front. Now, asked about the biggest achievements of the NDA government, its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic still tops the list for the fifth consecutive MOTN beginning from January 2022. Despite the grand inauguration of the Ram Temple in Ayodhya, it comes second in the list, even though there is a 6% rise of points from August 2023. So in 6 months' time, that's quite a substantial increase of 6%, yet it still does not overwhelm the perception that the NDA government had handled the COVID pandemic well, and probably that's one of the big reasons, because it in fact endorses the way the NDA government went about sorting out issues of the economy as well as health in that period. That is very creditable because there was a pandemic, and therefore you are seeing the ratings shoot up for them when it comes to the general ratings that's there. The other points, and that's very important, is corruption-free governance. And remember, corruption is a big electoral issue, and revocation of Article 370 are third and fourth, but much lower in terms of percentages. Interestingly, infrastructure, which is roads, airports, railways, do not figure very high in the ratings, as well as social welfare programs, which we all remember is the La Bharatis, and that in terms of popular perception do not figure very high in terms of the government successes. That is something for the NDA to look at as to why some of its most important programs that the Prime Minister talks about doesn't figure very high when it comes to the poll. Maybe because people feel that this is their right and actually looks at stunning sort of developments that have happened, which the BJP has been able to handle, or the NDA government's been able to handle, and therefore puts the balance more towards COVID management than to the Ram Mandir and then Article 370 and corruption. Now let's come to one of the most interesting findings of it, which is the 10th one. And the big takeaway is, what are the responses to the biggest failures which the Modi and the BJP must worry about? Price rise continues to dominate the list, followed by unemployment or joblessness. Ironically, the government's handling of COVID-19 is third on the list of failures, with the lack of economic growth featuring in the fourth place. Now add these three issues together: inflation, jobs, and lack of economic growth, and the ruling BJP has a worrisome 54% seeing the government doing poorly on economic issues among all its perceived failures. Mind you, any other government with such dismal views about its economic performance would have seen its poll numbers plummet, but not Narendra Modi and the NDA, who exhibit not even a telltale sign of anti-incumbency in terms of poll numbers. In fact, it shoots to a majority. So finally, having done the 10 takeaways, let's quickly assess what explains the dichotomy, the paradox, where the Modi government gets a thumbs down on its handling of potent electoral issues such as unemployment and price rise, but is still heading for a clear majority. Now, let's get into some of the reasons. The poll does indicate the enormous trust that the electorate bestows on Narendra Modi. The Prime Minister is seen not just as a decisive leader, but also as someone who works tirelessly for the public good and against whom no major corruption charges have stuck. If you remember, in the last years of the UPA, it was beset by corruption charges. You don't seem to hear much of that, though the opposition has tried to raise the Adani issue, the Rafale purchase, but that doesn't seem to have cut ice with the voters. Nor, interestingly, do voters pin the blame for their economic woes on Narendra Modi. Instead, he is applauded for the fact that he has been able to push the economy back on the high growth path in the face of a devastating global pandemic. They also appreciate Modi's successful handling of the G20 summit, which saw, as we all witnessed, India emerge as the Vishwamitra, or friend of the world. In fact, this MOTN shows that raising India's global stature as the second most important thing that Prime Minister Modi will be remembered for. The first is his contribution to the building of the Ram Mandir, and the third is the abrogation of Article 370. Now, just think, this was a separate question that was asked of people, and they were asked what would be what would they remember Prime Minister Modi for in his 10 years as Prime Minister, and they mentioned the Ram Mandir right on top, followed by G20 and the handling of global issues, and of course, Article 370. Now, the accomplishment of Article 370 and the Ram Mandir is actually concerns two major items of the saffron agenda, which, the entire range of saffron parties that are there, including, of course, the mentor, RSS, and the BJP, it has ensured that not only will the BJP retain its core voter base, but is also able to convince the Hindu fence-sitters to go for it. While all these analyses are good, let's not forget that the one thing that overrides all else factors, and that is brand Modi. The Prime Minister has masterfully converted the 2024 Lok Sabha elections into a referendum on his leadership and performance. If Prime Minister Modi wins a third consecutive term, as the MOTN predicts, he would be in a league of his own with a mandate to craft a new Indian republic. For the full findings of the Mood of the Nation poll, you can read the latest issue of India Today magazine, where I and my colleagues have an in-depth analysis with detailed charts and graphics. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me next week. Nothing but the truth.